Join us now in today's Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Barbara Holmes, your host for today's Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Area Conference of Churches and KTBC. On May 10th, a significant event occurred in the religious community here in Austin. Austin Metropolitan Communities was formed, a new interfaith religious coalition that brings together the Austin Area Conference of Churches, Metro Ministries of Austin, and representatives of the Jewish and Muslim faith. Our guests today have been involved in the planning and the launching of this new organization, Austin Metropolitan Ministries, so let's meet them now. Lucy Todd has been a member of the organizing committee and is now on Austin Metropolitan Ministries Board of Directors. Steve Marcus has been working with the committee and is a delegate to Austin Metropolitan Ministries. That's a mouthful. I'm going to have to learn to say that. Lucy, Steve, both congratulations for the efforts that have brought about this new organization. And I'd like to have a little bit of background. How long has the planning been going on to bring about such a feat, a new organization?
Well, Barbara, the real planning started about 4 years ago when Metro Ministries and the Austin Area Conference of Churches got together to do some long-range planning. And they realized that in Austin we really needed one organization instead of two. And then out of that, discussions began, which led to the inclusion of the Jewish community into a new organization. And I've been meeting with this group for about 1.5 years, and Steve has been involved for a couple of months. And it culminated in the convening convention, which happened in May with the start of the new organization.
That's a long time, a lot of meetings. Steve, you've come in more recently to the planning stage, but as you heard about it, what attracted you to be a part of that committee that was working to bring about a new organization?
Well, Barbara, I realized that there are urgent human needs in the Austin metropolitan area that have not been addressed in any unified or comprehensive fashion by the religious communities in Austin. I know that the religious congregations in the city have tremendous resources, financial resources, and many, many people who want to help, but individual congregations, and I've seen this from my own congregation, just can't make a really significant impact on their own. And my feeling is that by coming together through Austin Metropolitan Ministries, the religious communities in Austin can become a more vital and effective force in providing human services to the needy in the city. And in addition, I think that I myself and other individuals and the community as a whole can be enriched and broadened by interacting with people from other faith traditions.
Well, it is going to be a new experience, but it's gotten off to a grand start. At the convening convention that we talked about, the guest speaker was the Reverend Bruce Tennyson, Executive Director of Houston Metropolitan Ministries. He was asked by the organizing committee to be the guest speaker because he's been director at a number of ecumenical and interfaith organizations, brings a lot of credentials. I know he served an organization in Pittsburgh, Tulsa Metropolitan Ministries, the Dallas Greater Community of Churches, and in Houston, the interfaith organization there represents 7 faith traditions. So we felt like some of the experience that he had needed to be shared, and I was able to interview Bruce while he was here, and we're going to look at some parts of the interview and let you all respond to that, and also let our viewers know some of the benefit of Bruce's experience. And the first question that I asked him had to do with the kind of things, what are the advantages when the religious community comes together in a more unified interfaith organization? So that was the first question, and let's go to the tape now and look at that, and then when he's finished, we'll talk about that among ourselves.
Start that by saying that I think, first of all, we're drawing from a number of congregations and a number of traditions. That means that you have a lot of strength to work with. that you haven't had before. It means that you can work with programs in a broader sense. Let me give an example of that. In Dallas, the Greater Dallas Community of Churches about 5 years ago organized North Dallas Shared Ministry. It was an affluent part of Dallas. Today there are some 39 congregations that are part of that, and they've been able to do an outstanding job with emergency services because so many people had a need for that. But at the same time, our housing committee worked with them on advocacy, always coupling advocacy with direct services. In that case, working to help mentally ill people who've been moved out of institutions onto the streets, to help them to find housing through legislative action, trying to keep from cuts in mental illness and mental retardation budgets, things of that kind. That's one example. Another example of what you can do with different faith traditions is coupling your strength for public policy work. Trying to be sure, for instance, that City Council takes a strong stand on behalf of people in need. Third thing that it does is that it helps a lot with individual congregations. Your strength, I think, in a large organization comes from your congregations.
Speaking of congregations, I didn't ask a very important question, Lucy. How many congregations and agencies are charter members of Austin Metropolitan Ministries?
Well, we had about 50 who had signed up prior to our convening convention, and then that night about another 30 people expressed their intent to join. But we're hoping that we'll have 200 or more congregations who will come on board eventually.
Well, Steve, how is the Jewish community represented?
Well, each Jewish congregation in the city of Austin gets 2 delegates to the delegate assembly, the governing body of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, as does every other congregation. The Jewish Community Council of Austin, which is a community-wide organization involved in a number of activities, including the provision of social services to members of the Jewish community, will also have 2 delegates. And in addition, Gail Miller from Congregation Beth Israel and Rabbi Mark Sack from Congregation Agudas Achim are on the board of Austin Metropolitan Ministries.
Well, it's a new experience here in Austin, and there again, I felt that the experience that Bruce had was helpful, and in the interview, another question that I asked him was, what is the religious community, how is it enriched as you learn to work together? And he has some interesting answers about interfaiths working together across traditional lines. So again, I'd like for us to hear what Bruce has to say about interfaith organizations working together, since that is new for us and we're learning together.
Key word to that, Barbara, is tolerance. It greatly increases tolerance. An example of that would be in a group that we had in Dallas. We had people from about 27 different faith backgrounds working together in groups. And I remember one time a minister from the Assembly of God was talking with a group. And somebody from a more mainline Protestant tradition asked why he was meeting with this group. And he responded that once people were willing to communicate with him and other people in his tradition, then they didn't have to be so rigid anymore, and were able to work together. Now, out of that experience, those people began to talk not only about common faith questions, but they began to address service needs out in the community together as well. When we get into work going across Christian community, including Jewish community, other faith groups, that takes on another added dimension. I remember in a community once, which wasn't interfaith, when the Christian group wanted to meet with the mayor of that city, the mayor sometimes would meet with them. But when they went together with people from the Jewish community, the mayor immediately recognized that he was talking with people across the full faith spectrum and immediately granted them an audience and paid much more attention to their needs. When I think sometimes of organizations, I remember once in Philadelphia, I thought, what if this organization hadn't been interfaith? What if we didn't have Jewish and, say, Unitarian participants? And I looked at the leadership, and I was aware of the tremendous loss that that would be to that organization and its impact on the community. I think also we find that when we have dialogue together, particularly interfaith dialogue, some people may feel, well, we'll lose our Christian identity. We'll become just one big conglomerate faith. I think we almost always find that when Christians and Jews talk together across theological lines, it almost always pushes both back to their own tradition and a greater understanding of their own faith tradition, as well as being able to communicate with each other. My experience has been that an organization is greatly strengthened when it becomes interfaith, both from a faith standpoint as well as what it can do meaningfully in the community.
So, Lucy, as you have worked with the committee, are you hoping this strengthening will come about?
I've already seen it, Barbara, even in the planning stages. The leadership that has come in from the Jewish community has greatly strengthened the organization, and we already feel that we have new allies in our struggles.
Working together.
Yes.
Well, Steve, you mentioned you were concerned about the needs that had to be met in the community, and are there ways that a more broadly based religious organization might be able to be more effective?
I think there's no doubt about it, Barbara. In fact, Austin Metropolitan Ministries has already brought together representatives from social service agencies of the various religious communities, including Caritas and Lutheran Social Services, El Buen Samaritano, the Jewish Community Council of Austin, and others, to plan for a community-wide emergency assistance program. As I sat at the convening convention and was surrounded by members of so many congregations representing many different faith groups, I was really filled with a sense of what we can accomplish if we all work together. It was a very exciting time, and I was also filled with a sense of how I individually can grow as I work with people from different faith groups.
Well, it's going to be a challenge, but it is so exciting. Any organization takes work to maintain it, and especially the startup. And so in the interview with Bruce, I asked a question specifically about that. As an organization was taking its shape, a new life, what might be some principles or guidelines or suggestions that would help us move together in a more unified way with more effective ministries and service? And he made 4 points that I think are very helpful, and I'd like for you to comment on those. So let's look at the tape and hear his 4 points on that.
Certain principles that may be important there. I think one, it's very important to be very clear from the beginning about the organization's purpose. It's kind of like you wake up in the middle of the night and you immediately know this is what this organization is about. I think that's important to have your agenda clearly in front of you, so that when you're setting goals, when you're making plans for a new year, your purpose is clearly in front of you. And I think it's important that that purpose reflect not just general things, not only concern for direct service, but that it include a concern for justice issues, that it include a basic concern for advocacy for the poor. That's an important thing then, is beginning with a clear agenda, a clear purpose. Another thing along with that is, I think, the importance of building a broad base of ownership in the organization, developing the constituency, enabling as many people as possible to share in the leadership of the organization, being clear at the same time to have strong direction at the top from a strong executive director, other staff persons when the agency can afford that, and excellent lay leadership. Third thing I think that's important is in an organization like this, I think it's very important to look broadly at what you can do. It's fine to coordinate emergency services. That needs to be done. But with an ecumenical or interfaith organization, you can have perhaps a broader urban division or urban committee that looks at emergency services, at the same time is aware of the advocacy that's needed, that can see then problems of housing not being available to people, problems of homeless persons, to look at public policy issues, and to relate more broadly at issues such as poverty, racism, things of that kind. Fourth and final thing I'd want to say as a principle might be to be in touch with the constituency that the organization comes from. Congregations being, I think, the primary base out of which the organization grows and that it looks to, as well as the faith traditions that are present in that organization. I think it's important not just to act as a social service agency, but to act based on the struggles that one has with one's own and with others' faith traditions, and then it grows out of that.
So those 4 points, he began with the idea of the purpose of the organization, and that might be a very good thing to start with. Steve, could you give us the purpose of Austin Metropolitan Ministries?
The purpose, Barbara, as stated in our bylaws, is first to join together in celebration and dialogue, and secondly, and more specifically, to serve the community and its residents through human service delivery systems and community development by providing financial support and by providing volunteers, but also, and very importantly, by providing educational programs and leadership on policy issues. And third, to enrich and broaden the interreligious and interethnic and intercultural relationships within the community through programs, through dialogue, and through joint action.
Well, that is a very comprehensive statement, and I know the inclusiveness was a concern in the very early conversation about working together in a larger ecumenically interfaith organization. And how, Lucy, does the organization see it's going to get started? What are the next steps? You've had a convening convention, but do you have staff? Is there an office? Where do you go from here?
Well, the new board of directors will have it's probably its first very important task to hire an executive director. And we are expecting to have a nationwide search. We've already had inquiries from outside of the state. We hope that person will be on board in the fall. Also, we'll be looking for office space. We'd like to have a space that's accessible to everyone in the community with good parking and good meeting rooms so that we can have a lot of activity going on there. And then we'll be forming some committees to look at all of these areas that Steve and Bruce have mentioned.
Now, that board of directors is going to be a working group. As he talked about the big picture, I think that's important. Steve, you were talking about direct services, but also the advocacy, the policy that goes along with that. And from the perspective of the big picture, Lucy, what were some of the dreams that held you together during all of this planning? What was one of the central dreams about what Austin Metropolitan Ministries would be?
Well, I have thought for a long time that, and Steve mentioned the strength in the congregations in this community, and that if we could get those congregations together on some of the crucial issues, that we would really be able to get some things done. And my particular interest is in hunger and poverty. And for starters, we're going to try to coordinate the food delivery, emergency kinds of services, and get congregations really cooperating to help the existing social service agencies like Caritas and Salvation Army. So that is has been one of my goals in seeing this through.
Well, probably those are goals that are fairly common to everyone, and I'm sure that short-term and long-term goals will be developed. There's just an awful lot to be done as you get started. As he spoke about the constituency, Steve, I too, as I sat in the constituting convention, thought what a marvelous expression there was about concern and need in responding to it in Austin. And there must have been very adequate publicity and promotion, but there's still going to be questions. How do we do this? Who do you contact? What is happening now? If a person were interested, how would they find out more about Austin Metropolitan Ministries?
Well, Barbara, as Lucy has mentioned, we don't have permanent staff yet, and we're going to have a very hard-working board of directors for a while. And I think the best way for people to find out what's going on is to contact a couple of the members of the board of directors who have been involved in the process all along and who also have been very deeply involved in Metro Ministries of Austin and the Austin Area Conference of Churches. The two contact points probably should be Father Walter Dalton and Mr. Roland Todd. and I could give you their phone numbers that people could call them if they're interested and would like further information. Father Dalton's phone number is 447-6144, and Mr. Todd's number is 450-0840.
Why don't you say those again one more time, please?
Okay. Father Dalton at 447-6144, and Mr. Roland Todd at 450-0840.
There's a lot of congregations and groups represented, and there's going to have to be opportunities so that some sort of goal that will pull us together can be designed. As you think about Austin Metropolitan Ministries, this new language, we're all going to have to work on that, from Austin Area Conference of Churches and Metropolitan Ministries of Austin to Austin Metropolitan Ministries. Steve, as you've served on this steering committee, organizing committee in the last few months, what is a dream that you would have, say 5 years, what would you like to see this organization doing?
I would like to see this organization involving many congregations from many faith groups. And I was moved by some of the things that Bruce Tennyson said in his speech at the convening convention. I would like to see us as a community joining together, helping the needy of Austin, joining together and learning and feeling the pain of the needy in the people of Austin. Then joining together, moved by these feelings that we have, to provide services, to help with hunger, to help the homeless, and then joining together in celebration. And not only providing these services to others, but also at the same time growing ourselves and growing together through interacting with others that have very different perspectives. One of the things that has really stimulated me in interacting with this committee is being able to interact with people like Lucy and other people on the committee that are coming from very different faith traditions, and it's been a very broadening experience for me.
That is typical of, I hope, the kind of growth and enthusiasm that does happen. Lucy, what would you quickly say your dream for Austin Metropolitan Ministries 5 years from now would be?
Well, I can't say it much better than Steve did, but the same idea, and I have hoped that what we would have, say in 5 years, would be a very visible presence of the religious community doing the kinds of things that Steve was talking about.
So not only services with agreed upon goals such as those in poverty or hunger, but educating, becoming more aware and enriched by each other's traditions so that more activity can take place. And some of these will be very visible, and others probably will not be all of that visible. We have a lot of getting acquainted to do between the faith traditions. So the new organization is in place, but the Austin Area Conference of Churches and Metro Ministries of Austin, what has happened to them, their program life and ministries?
Well, Barbara, the boards of both of those organizations have voted that at the appropriate time their assets will be turned over to Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and that will happen sometime in the fall. We're in a process right now where we're doing all of the paperwork, getting the Secretary of State's office to approve our charter and getting a tax-exempt status from IRS. So when all of that is taken care of and we're really ready to get going, then the other two organizations will be dissolved and the membership will be totally a part of our new organization. And one thing I would like to point out right now is that we are committed to keeping the programs that were going on in those two organizations, especially the Brackenridge and Jail chaplaincy programs, which are vital to the work here in the city. And the monthly luncheon meetings will probably continue. The weekday forums that we've had to discuss issues of concern to congregations.
Well, it sounds as if there's a lot to look forward to from merging and coming together, and this new organization will come into life. I just appreciate both of you being here so much. You've been wonderful guests, and on behalf of the religious community, want to express appreciation for all of your work and your commitment to bringing this about. So, thank you. And for you viewers, we appreciate your being with us and hope that you will join us again to watch the Austin Faith Dialogue series. Thank you and good day.